Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Chairman and dear colleagues. Well, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to come here. I have been following the work of ISTAS for quite some years now, and I have been very impressed by the work you have done in Barcelona. This is some of the best work done in any country in this field. And I know from a recent workshop in Copenhagen that many of the researchers and practitioners from other countries are very impressed by the work that is going on in Barcelona. So you are one of the leading centers in this field. I've been working in psychosocial factors for about 30 years now, and as you can see, my hair is getting gray, and I don't have as much hair as I used to have. And I am now going very soon to retire as a professor. So I think maybe this will be my last international talk or keynote. So it couldn't be a better place than here. In the future, I will just have more time for things like grandchildren and things like that. So next time you invite the professor from Denmark, he will probably be a much prettier person, a younger, and maybe even a woman. Let's see. Okay. The main emphasis in this presentation will be on research. I'm a researcher, and the aim of this presentation will be to convince you, if you're not already convinced, that there is good scientific evidence, good scientific reasons for working hard and seriously with psychosocial factors. So I hope, if you're not already convinced, by the end of the next 45 minutes that you will be a little more convinced. This is my goal, and I hope to reach it. When you look at psychosocial factors at work, I hope these slides are correct, because they were translated and I don't understand Spanish, but I'm sure they have the same meaning as what I'm saying. If not, you will be confused. And I also hope that I will keep track with the right slide and not talk about another slide. If I do so, Clara, you will please tell me, because that will be confusing to people. But this slide is showing a more or less bird's eye perspective on the psychosocial factors at work. And there seems to be three main types of factors. One is what we call traditional problems. The other one is human service work, and the third one is work without boundaries. The main point here is that these three types of work represent different psychosocial problems, and they should also represent different challenges, and they should also have different solutions. The traditional problems have been well known for many years in connection with industrial work, like assembly lines, and service work, like cleaning and bus driving. In modern workplaces, we see new examples of this type of work in call centers. The human service work problems are mainly found in the public or the semi-public sector, education, social work, and the health sector, hospitals and so forth. Here we find problems in connection with so-called emotional labor and burnout. The work without boundaries is expanding rapidly these years. This type of work is increasing because of the widespread use of cell phones, computers, emails, etc., so that people can work at all times and in all places. Now, we have two main models in psychosocial research, as some of you may know: the demand control model, also called the job strain model, and the effort reward model. The first model was developed by Bob Karasek in the United States and Thuras Terrell from Sweden. The second model was developed by Johannes Siegrist, who is a German sociologist. I'll just show a few slides illustrating these two models. This study is a study where you see the results from a Finnish study where about 800 employees were followed for 26 years The study used both models, the job strain model to the left and the effort reward model to the right. The topic of the study is the relation between poor working conditions and mortality due to heart disease. The study shows that persons with high job strain, which is high demands and low control or influence at work or autonomy, may have double risk of dying from heart disease. As you can see, the relative risk is 2.22. The study also shows that persons who are exposed to high effort, low rewards also have the double risk. The relative risk is 2.42. Rewards at work can be salary, it can be recognition and positive evaluation, or it could be a good promotion. So there can be different types of rewards at work. So the point is here that if demands are too high, or if efforts are high compared to the rewards you are given, then your health is at risk. So this is a very convincing study from Finland. This slide shows the results from a new study from Belgium. It is again about job strain, which is high demands and low autonomy. And the study covers a 6 to 7 years period. The green bar shows the risk of those people who had high job strain at the beginning of the period and also at the end of the period. These persons had long-term job strain. For both men and women, we see more than a threefold risk of developing a depression among the long-term exposed. For those who were not exposed at the beginning but who were exposed at the end of the period, we see more than double risk. These are the gray bars. The lowest risk is seen among those who were not exposed at any time. This is the red bars. It should be remembered that depression is one of the major diseases of modern man in many countries all over the world. It is one of the major causes of absence, early retirement, and use of medicine. And it is also the main risk for suicide, as we just heard from the Catalonian minister up here. In this way, the work environment plays a major role for the mental health of the employees. So in summary, the aim of this introduction was just to emphasize that psychosocial factors at work are not just soft factors. These factors cause serious diseases and they also increase mortality. And we have good reasons and good theories to describe these factors. This also means that we can start doing prevention. Now, my next topic will be changes at work. All over the world, we see dramatic changes these years. Downsizing, outsourcing, privatization, temporary work, low job security, etc. This is a tremendous challenge and a large potential problem for the health and the well-being of the workers. This slide shows the results from an interesting Norwegian study. It's about something that never happened, really. The company doctors measured the blood pressure and the pulse of the workers every year, and suddenly they observed a dramatic increase in the average blood pressure of the workers. The systolic blood pressure increased from 130 to 145, and the diastolic pressure from 85 to 95. These increases were dramatic, since this means that the risk of heart disease and stroke was about 30 to 40% increased. The doctors could not understand this until they talked with the workers and the shop stewards, who told them that there were very strong rumors about a factory closure in 1984 and 85. These rumors caused serious uncertainty among the workers, and this uncertainty increased the blood pressure. Try to imagine all over the world how many factories are in this situation, how many places we have rumors about factory closures. If you multiply with all those factories all over the world, you can imagine the health problem that is created by factory closures and downsizing all over. Now, this is a Danish study performed by one of my colleagues, Lars Iversen. In this case, the factory closure actually took place. The researchers compared the hospital admissions among employers in a shipyard before, during, and after closure. These hospital admissions were compared with the hospital's admissions for workers from another shipyard, which was used for comparison. Before the closure, the hospital admissions for cardiovascular diseases among the shipyard workers was about 80% of the comparison group. During closure, the level was about the same, but after closure, it was 160%. So what we see here is a doubling of the risk from before closure to after closure. So it is not only the risk of getting fired that matters, but also the actual experience of losing a job. Now, this is a study from London. It's an English study of public employees, the Whitehall study. In a department under privatization, the risk of new cases of heart trouble was 85% increased among the men and women. Privatization of public workplaces is extremely common in many countries. This is sometimes called new public management. And this study seems to demonstrate that such a process can be harmful to the health of the civil servants. Finally, this slide shows the effects of downsizing in the public sector in Finland. The departments were divided into 3 groups. No downsizing, small downsizing, which was less than 8% of the employees were fired, and less than 18% of the employees were fired, and large downsizing, more than 18% were fired. For cardiovascular diseases, we can see a double risk among those employees who kept their jobs. So this is a large study of more than 22,000 public employees, so the results are very significant. A double risk in those departments where the downsizing was big, among those who stayed at work. So this is quite thought-provoking. Now, all in all, these and many other studies show that the drastic changes at the labor market may have drastic effects on the health of the employees. The employees experience loss of control or autonomy, loss of social support from colleagues and supervisors, loss of meaning, loss of predictability, loss of rewards, recognition, career, and salary. With other words, they lose the main qualities of work. The results is higher stress and uncertainty, more disease, and higher mortality. So the next topic is, I would say, in the international research, a rather hot topic. It is the question of justice or fairness. An increasing number of studies from several countries have shown that injustice may be harmful to people's health. Now, first of all, what is justice at work? As you can see here, there are a number of dimensions of justice. It's important to understand that justice is not only distributive justice. Justitia distributiva, well, this is one type of justice. This means that goods and salaries and so forth are distributed in a fair way among the workers. When you do research in this area, you discover that the workers are even more interested in the process. So the process matters, the process is important, and the process is about the procedures being followed at the workplace. Are the procedures followed? Is the process fair? So even though the distribution is fair, you may have a problem if the process is not fair. And also, when we look at justice, we have 2 subtypes. The interpersonal justice is a matter of respect. Is every worker, employees, or all the employees treated with respect by their supervisors? And also informative justice. Do we get sufficient and relevant information about the process that's going on? If you look at the research on justice, you will find that all these factors are extremely important for the health and well-being of the employees. Now, in Denmark, we have performed a national study of justice of work based on about 3,500 employees, and this is a national representative sample. In this study, we have found a very clear association between the experienced level of justice at work and the stress of the employees. The employees with the lowest level of justice have the highest level of stress. To the left, you can see 32 points, while the employees with the highest level of justice have the lowest level of stress. To the left, you can see average 19 points. So you can see there's a considerable difference between employees who are exposed to low levels of justice and high levels of justice. Now the next slide shows a result from a Finnish study from Finland, where the researchers looked into two types of justice. One is respect, which is much the same as interpersonal justice, and the other one is procedural justice. They found that both types of justice were associated with the risk of developing depression, diagnosed by a doctor. Employees who were not treated with respect and employees who experienced a low level of justice in the processes at work had higher levels of developing a new depression. In this study, depression was, as I said, diagnosed by a doctor. The results indicate that injustice is harmful to the mental health of the employees. The same topic was studied in the English study of public employees. For both men and women, the risk of developing poor mental health was higher if the public servants experienced injustice. As you can see, ALTO, this group, procedural justice is lack of justice in the ways in which they were treated. For both men and women, the risk was about 60% higher among those who were treated in an unfair manner. Finally, this Finnish study shows that employees who are treated unfairly have a higher risk of absence from work. For men, the absence was 57% higher, and for women it was 23% higher. The conclusion is here that if employees are treated unfairly, they pay back by increasing their absence. Other studies show that lack of justice at work is also associated with higher risk of heart disease and other diseases. So all in all, these studies indicate that both employers and employees pay a high price for injustice at work. On the other hand, it's a good idea to treat the employees fair and with respect. Justice is a universal human value. No person likes to be discriminated or overlooked. Respect and recognition are basic human needs, also at the workplace. Now, my next topic is what we call the new fatigue. The new fatigue is a concept we have developed recently. In the days of my grandparents, fatigue was a good thing. You were tired after a long day's work and you had a good night's sleep. Today, the interesting thing is that people who are tired cannot sleep. They need to sleep, but they cannot. Fatigue and poor sleep have formed a vicious circle. Now, this is the development of fatigue in the Swedish population. The numbers go from 1986 to all the way to 2001. Some years ago, back trouble was symptom number one, but today fatigue is the most common symptom in the general population. Also, sleep troubles and distress have been increasing, as you can see here, during later years. In Sweden, burnout and distress are today the most common causes of long-term sickness, absence, and preterm retirement from the labor market. In Denmark, it used to be musculoskeletal disorders that was the most common cause of absence and preterm retirement. Today, it is psychological and psychiatric diseases. So these two groups of diseases have changed place now. And this is also happening in many other countries. Maybe it will happen here too. Today, here, still it is musculoskeletal, but maybe you will have the same experience as we have had in Sweden and Denmark. In the Danish PUMA study, we looked at the association between burnout and sleeping problems. We used the Karolinska Sleep Questionnaire from Stockholm to assess sleeping problems. The picture is clear. The higher the burnout level, the more sleeping problems. Actually, the level of sleeping problems is almost twice as high among the high burnout group as among the low burnout group. The most common sleeping problems are troubles falling asleep, waking up many times during the night, and waking up too early in the morning. The picture is actually disturbing here. The more tired you are, the more you need to sleep. As you can see here, those who need to sleep well cannot sleep. And when you cannot sleep well, you get more tired, and when you're more tired, you cannot sleep, etc. This is a vicious circle. As you can see on this slide, burnout is also related to absence days. The absence level among those with high burnout is about double compared with the low burnout group. Thus, burnout is not only a problem for the employees, but also for the employer at the workplace. So if many of the employees are burned out, you will have a much higher absence level at the workplace. Burnout is also related to the use of medicine. On this slide, you can see that employees with a high burnout level use painkillers 6 times as often as employees with low levels of burnout. So we are here talking about use of medicine against any type of pain last week. So these people take medicine weekly. So as you can see, this is a really dramatic difference, that more than 1 out of 3 workers use medicine several times a week against pain. So this shows some validity of the questions in the questionnaire, that it is such a dramatic increase in use of medicine. Burnout and fatigue is not only a question of sleep, absence, and medicine. This study shows that people with high level of exhaustion, which is almost the same as burnout, have much higher risks of heart disease. This is a study from the Netherlands, where more than 3,000 workers were followed for almost 10 years by Ed Appels and his group in Maastricht. Now, this study from Denmark, we have shown that fatigue and exhaustion are not only related to heart disease, which you can see is the red curve of heart disease, ischemic heart disease, but it is also related to total mortality of the employees. Those people with high levels of exhaustion have a 60% increase in mortality during a 6-year follow-up. And this study includes almost 10,000 people from the Copenhagen area. So just being tired is not only a question of poor sleep, it also increases the mortality of the workers. This is a German study of 2 symptoms of sleeping problems, and they are related to the risk of heart disease. Johannes Siegrist looked at the symptom waking up early and another symptom, difficulty falling asleep. For both symptoms, we see much higher risks of heart disease. For those who woke up early in the morning had about 4 times as high a risk for heart disease, and those who had difficulties falling asleep had more than double risk. So we see a pattern here. Fatigue, burnout, and exhaustion are all related to poor sleep, and both are related to higher risk of heart disease and higher risk of death. This is an American study. Now we are leaving the labor market. This is a study of housewives. These housewives were living in a small town of Framingham in the eastern part of the United States. And the researchers studied these housewives and followed them for 20 years. As you can see, both tension, symptoms of anxiety, and troubles falling asleep were strongly related to heart disease, also among these women. So difficulties falling asleep increased the risk 4 times for heart disease. Now, it is not only the quality of the sleep, but it is also the length of the sleeping period is important. In this study of American nurses, it's a very large study. More than 70,000 nurses have been followed in this study. You can see that the best number of hours to sleep is 7 or 8. I don't know why there are scissors and eyeglasses here in the bottom. You can see there are strange symbols. I don't know how they got in there. I think it is a trick by Bill Gates. Sometimes I do one thing and Bill Gates does something else with my PowerPoint. I am out of control. But it is not scissors. It means 5 or less, and it is not eyeglasses. It means 9 or more. I don't know what happens. But anyway, you should sleep 7 or 8 hours each night, if possible. So there are 2 things here. One is the quality of the sleep, and the other one is how many hours you sleep. And they are both related to the risk of heart disease. Unfortunately, in modern society, I don't know about Spain, but I suspect that it's the same problem down here. People sleep less and less because there is a 24-hour society going on. There are so many people who think that we should be awake so that we can use money. And this threatens the health of the employees also. This may be one of the reasons why shift workers have higher risks of heart disease, because shift workers, as you know, have too few hours of sleep and they have too poor quality of sleep. So this may be an explanation for that. Now, the Japanese are, as you may know, famous for working hard and for many hours. In this study, it is shown that workers who worked more than 60 hours per week and workers who had 2 or more days with too little sleep had about double risk of heart disease. As you can see, the Japanese researchers adjusted for many of the well-known risk factors such as high blood pressure and cholesterol. In Japan, they have a word called karoshi, which means death due to exhaustion and overwork. This study shows that there is good research evidence behind the epidemic of karoshi in Japan. Burnout and fatigue are not only related to health, but also to occupational accidents. This study from the Netherlands shows a very clear association between burnout levels of the employees and the risk of accidents. Employees with low levels of burnout have about 4% accidents, while employees with high levels of burnout have about 16% accidents, 4 times as much. This is a national study based on the large database of the Occupational Health Service system in Netherlands. So this study shows that when people are tired or burned out, they pay less attention to risks at work. The same is seen in the traffic. Many traffic accidents, as you know, are due to drivers who are tired or fall asleep while driving the car. So we have a very important risk factors for accidents here. This slide gives a picture of the so-called new fatigue. To the left, we have many of the characteristics of modern working life. Shift work, 24-hour society, high emotional demands, high work pace, conflicts, etc. And to the right, we have the symptoms of many employees today: fatigue, burnout, depression, sleeping problems, etc. These factors all increase the risk of heart disease, accidents, and death. This is a modern epidemic. Now, one of the features of modern life is the increasing labor force participation of women. When you want to have a family life with children and at the same time a full-time job, work-family conflict will often be the result. You want to be both places at the same time. One woman said to me, "I often leave my workplace too early, only to discover that I get home too late." So this is the normal situation for many parents with children. So, in the Danish psychosocial study from 2005, we looked at the association between experienced work-family conflict and the number of absence days. This is an interesting picture. For women, there is a clear association. The more conflict, the higher the absence rate, from about 5 days to about 12 days per year. For men, as you can see, there is no association at all. It looks like the men try to get away from the family and the conflicts at home by going to work, so the women can stay home and solve the conflict. At least this is how the Danish men try to solve work-family conflict, by getting away. This is of course different down here. It is, I don't know why you laugh. It's interesting to see that for both genders, there is a clear association between work-family conflict and burnout level. For both men and women, the burnout level is about twice as high for those with high levels of work-family conflict. This association can go both ways. When you are tired, you get more conflict, and when you have more conflict, you get more tired. So work-family conflict is about two things. It is about time and it's about energy. It is difficult for modern people to have the necessary time for both worlds, and also to have enough energy for both work and family. Very often the workplace is the winner in this conflict. When people are asked, they say that they give highest priority to the family. In questionnaires, they say that. But in practice, people tend to give the highest priority to the company. So there's a little bit of a conflict between what people say and what people do in this field. Now, the Swedish researcher Kristina Ortgomer looked at the female heart patients in Stockholm. She studied the risk for these patients of getting a new heart attack on the top of the one they already had. For these women, family stress was much worse than work stress. For work stress, there was a moderate extra risk, as you can see, but for marital stress in the family, the risk of getting a new heart attack was almost 3 times as high. In principle, these women should get help and support from their husbands, but in practice they got stress and a new heart attack, which was not so good. So this study shows how important it is to consider the whole life situation, with both family and work, if we want to understand the situation of the modern family. So, study both family and work. The same picture can be seen from this large international study. This is the InterHeart study. It includes heart patients from about 52 countries. Work stress is the strongest risk factor, but home stress is also important. For those with permanent stress, the risk is about double in both cases. This means that if you have both work stress and home stress, your risk will be 4 times as high. When you multiply the two risks, you get 4 times as high risk than those without stress. So work-family conflict is a big issue for Europe in the future. If we cannot solve the conflict, we will continue to get too few children, in particular in Italy, Spain and Greece, and other countries in the Mediterranean region. And if we get too few children, we will have large problems with aging populations in the years to come. We will get a demographic crisis in our countries. And it is very little comfort that the Japanese are doing even worse. There's one country that will be worse shape than Spain and Italy, and that is Japan. It will be a major crisis in many countries if we do not learn how to combine work and family. Now, a few words about COPSOC, Copenhagen Psychosocial Questionnaire. I'm a little bit, I think I may not have to talk about this because we have such a good group in Barcelona, the ISTAS group who is using this questionnaire in this area may be much better than we are. But today we have users of COPSOC in 25 countries, and we have now people interested in more than 50 countries. So we are creating a worldwide network of people using this questionnaire. So we're very happy that there's such an active group in Barcelona. Now the concept of the COPSOC is actually in 3 levels. We have the questionnaire in 3 versions. A long questionnaire for research, a medium size for work environment professionals, such as the occupational health services, and a short questionnaire for the workplaces, which can be used without experts. The short questionnaire is part of the medium, and the medium is part of the long. This is the concept. The concept is based on the philosophy of empowerment of employees and empowerment of workplaces. The idea is that psychosocial factors are not as complicated as people think. If you have a good tool, you can do a mapping of the psychosocial working conditions at your workplace, and if you have a good map, you have a good chance of reaching your goal. It is also part of the philosophy that work environment professionals will do a better job if they have a good tool. It is our experience that there are many poor questionnaires all over the world. Many of these questionnaires are actually worse than nothing. Thirdly, it is our belief that a good instrument should be theory-based. We say that there is nothing as practical as a good theory. The instrument is not based on one specific theory, but on several good theories about psychosocial factors at work. Theories are our manual to better working conditions. This slide shows the practical purposes of the 3-level concept. In Denmark, it is our experience that people who use the COPSOC also develop a richer language for talking about psychosocial working conditions. Some years ago, everyone used to talk about stress, burnout, and high demands. These were the 3 things people talked about. Today, people talk about things like emotional demands, work-family conflict, role conflicts, lack of predictability, meaning of work, possibilities for development, cognitive demands, etc. This means that we are able to talk about working conditions in a much more precise way than earlier. Any carpenter knows that there are many types of hammers and many types of nails. And the same is true for psychosocial factors. We need a rich vocabulary. COPSOC has been used for making national surveys of the psychosocial work environment twice in Denmark. Here you can see some of the results from the first study in 1997. This is the dimension of influence at work or autonomy at work. Jobs with scores around the national average have yellow bars. High values, you have green bars, high influence, and jobs with low influence have red bars. As you may be able to see, jobs with very low influence are food industry workers, office clerk, drivers, and cleaners. The COPSOC can also be used for making job profiles. In this case, we see a poor profile, food industry workers, probably the worst job in our country. These workers have low influence, low social support, low meaning, etc. This is the worst case. Most jobs in a country like ours have a mixture of red, green, and yellow bars. The red bars indicate areas for possible and hopefully improvements. The COPSOC can also be used to make a map of individual companies. In this case, we have a company with 6 departments. Again, the example is about influence at work. As you can see, the workers in department A and B have low influence, while the workers in departments C and F have high influence at work. In this case, the company may decide to make an effort to increase the influence of the workers in departments A and B, and in this way the COPSOC can be used to give priority to the work in the company. We have also used the questionnaire to follow the development in the country over time. In this slide you can see the development of what we call offensive behaviors in Denmark from 1997 to 2005. And as you can see, we have experienced a marked increase in offensive behaviors, bullying, threats of violence and sexual harassment. The increases have been between 28 and 61% for a period of only 8 years. And of course, this is a very disturbing situation from our country. In Denmark, COPSOC is the official national instrument to monitor the psychosocial work environment in the country. Of course, the instrument can also be used to monitor work environment in individual companies. Several large companies use COPSOC to monitor the development of working conditions. So now they are using it for the second or third time. And it's very interesting to follow the development of these big companies over time. When people ask the Danish Institute, what is a good job? We usually use the so-called 6 golden nuggets. A good job has high level of influence, a high meaning, high level of predictability, which is knowing what will happen a few months ahead, high social support from superiors and colleagues, adequate rewards, recognition, career and salary, and suitable demands, not too high and not too low. In such a job, the workers will not only have good health, but they will also have low absence and a high level of productivity. So these are the 6 golden nuggets, as we call them. So the situation in Denmark with regard to psychosocial factors can be seen at this slide. I cannot read Spanish so well, but I'll try to find the Danish slide here. Psychosocial factors at work has become 1 out of 4 priority areas of the government. The government has decided that this field should be improved with 5% during the period 2005 to 10, and we measure with the COPSOC. Psychosocial factors should be included in the mandatory workplace assessments by the companies, and the organizations at the labor market give high priority to psychosocial factors. The research in psychosocial factors has the highest priority of all fields in work environment research. COPSOC is used by thousands of workplaces in the public and in the private sector. So this is how far we are right now. Finally, a few remarks about the European situation. Since we live in a globalized economy, it becomes more and more important to understand the international situation. In Europe, we can still see large differences between the countries, but we also have some common trends. One of the common trends in Europe is increasing work pace and time pressure. This slide shows the results for a few European countries. As you can see, Spain is there and Denmark is on the top. Spain is ES, and also Germany and other countries. For Denmark and Germany and Spain, the picture is very clear. Work pace has been increasing during this period. The same is true if we look at all the 15 EU countries over the whole period, the bottom of the slide. So even though patterns are different in some of the countries, the overall trend seems to be clear. The employees of Europe feel the globalized competition on their own body and soul. Here you see the development in 2 things. Tight deadlines, which is typical for white-collar workers, and high speed, which is typical for assembly line workers or workers in the public sector, service sector. As you can see, we see increasing time pressure in both cases over time. This example shows that it's very important that we have international data so that we can document such unhealthy trends in the working environment. The international studies can also be used to compare the countries. Here you can see the comparison of job satisfaction in Europe. In this case, Denmark and Ireland have the highest levels, while Spain, Portugal, and Greece are in the bottom in the numbers from 2001. We also have here a study of influence, autonomy at work. Denmark, Sweden, and Norway seem to have the highest levels of influence. The Nordic countries, together with Netherlands, have a tradition for high influence to employees so that they can make their own decisions concerning their work. We believe that this gives both higher job satisfaction and health, but also higher productivity. The Nordic countries are among the most competitive in the world in spite of the high levels of taxes. As you may know, we have in Denmark shortage of labor right now. We are trying to import qualified labor from many other countries. So in conclusion, this is my final slide. Psychosocial factors have a large impact on health, on absence, motivation, disease, and mortality. They are not soft factors. They have very hard and very definite consequences. Secondly, psychosocial factors can be measured with simple instruments with high quality. And thirdly, the psychosocial work environment can be improved through a systematic and long-term effort by workplaces and authorities. Thank you.